Hello, everybody. Welcome to SHCTV. I'm Secondhand Coke, and we are going back to our Media Through Meghan series with episode 9, Meghan After Fame. And our episode is so titled today because we are going back to our analysis of Lady C's book, Harry and Meghan, The Real Story Persecutors or Victims. So it's the second edition. Her first book, I looked at both editions in this kind of extended period of time that we've had apart. And I really wanted to look at what was different. And Lady C is much more exact and much less censored in this second book or the second edition of the same book. She, in her first edition, takes more of a middle of the road narrative approach. It's like which is interesting about Lady C's biographies, because with Lady C's biographies, I've noticed that she comes in, she breaks the wall of the text. And when she is talking about, say, Cressida Bonus, she starts talking about her days with Cressida Bonus's mother or grandmother or, whatever the case may be. And it's kind of jarring for the reader, but I've put some thought into it about that choice. And I think it's good because the way I think Lady C wants to be viewed is as a person sitting at the tea table giving you the tea, as part of the court, which has been the gossip central of kings and queens since 1066. And as somebody who's fascinated with British history, I just think I'm fascinated with Lady C. When I first found her on YouTube, I was like, "Oh my God, this lady is fabulous." And I went through all of her, binge listened to all of her YouTube videos, and she really is a part of something that is now changing. And that's why I think I love her so much, is because she is kind of the tail end of gossip coming at you from people who've seen and heard, but from people who are seeing and hearing from a safe distance. You never want to get too close to the king. And the truth be told, there have been so many Harry and Meghans throughout the history of the English court that it's almost funny. And I'm talking before Wallace and David, before Henry VIII, and or Elizabeth the First, and the people who contested her throne, and the Duke of Clarence comes to mind from way back during the kingship of Edward the Fourth. And these are the same characters. They're these idiot guys who won't stop being idiots. And the only difference between now and the farther back you go in history is the dudes who kept doing this stuff. And I think about the Duke of Clarence in particular. They're dead. They don't do this stuff for long because they are dead. And Edward the Fourth was extremely, if I'm telling the story right, and please correct me if I get details wrong, but Edward the Fourth was extremely irritated by his younger brother, who continually would get up these little mini rebellions and was spreading gossip around court that his own mother was kind of slutting around the English court, and that Edward the Fourth was not a legitimate heir. This is this guy's 100% brother. And he's got to deal with his brother at some point. And the Duke of Clarence just pushes it and pushes it and pushing it. And Edward the Fourth keeps saying, "I'm going to have to kill you. No, I'm going to have to kill you. I'm going to have to kill you." And then finally he pushes it to be like, "Okay, I'm killing you." And Duke of Clarence is like, "No, you're not. You're not ever going to kill me. You're not going to do it." And Edward the Fourth is saying, "I'm going to kill you however you want me to be killed. You can be killed that way, but I am going to kill you." And then Duke of Clarence said, "I want to die by being drowned in a vat of Momsey wine." And so he doesn't believe he's going to be killed until he is drowned in that vat of Momsey wine. And this is what Harry and Meghan remind me of. Is just they keep pushing their family who loves them and who doesn't understand why they're doing this to him, or why they can't just be happy with their lot and move on and deal with the fact that there is primogeniture and that it favors firstborn sons, and just it's a pretty good life being a second son to a king. I don't know. So this is what's so interesting to me about the story of Harry and Meghan is I've seen it before. I've read it in history books before. It's just that before it's never been able to be played out in the media with the whole world watching, while we're like, yeah, I can see why you'd want to drown that guy. Somebody far off from the court hearing their story, a different story over a cup of tea, may not feel that way, or may have heard a different edition of it, or may have heard whatever. But when you're right up at that action and you see the narrative of the court, you're like, yeah, I get it. His brother wouldn't stop. And you just wonder, where is William going to end up in all of this? Because he's sick of his brother, or they say he is sick of his brother right now. We don't know, but Lady C's around the actual people who are playing out these stories. And I think that, going back to what I was talking about, is what makes reading her book so interesting, is that she is kind of one of the few people who've taken up and gone to us from outside the court and told us the stories of what are happening with the key players. And so, I trust a lot of what she says. I love how she says, for legal reasons, when she needs to cover herself. But um, anyway, that's the perspective that this book is written in. And so sometimes she will break in with her own history, which I think is as much a part of the history of the court as anything, because we need to know the people who are telling our stories. And I love that she sits down with us every day with her laptop in her lap and just kind of has tea and tells you what's going on. And it was so interesting to me when the kids started calling gossip tea, because I was a teacher for a long time. And when the kids started saying that, I'm like, wait. Are you calling gossip tea? Like, you guys are sitting down for tea at 4 o'clock? I mean, what are you guys doing? Like, or that you go to the soda shop after school every day? I mean, what is it? You guys are back to tea? We're back to tea now? Anyway, so moving on, we'll start talking about the book and I'll stop my own pontificating. But Lady C writes about Nikki Pretty: it takes a lot to break the back of a lifelong friendship, but there were two straws that did it for Nikki Pretty. The first was when Meghan fell in love with a rescue dog and wanted to wrest it away from someone who had displayed interest in it before Meghan did. She emailed the pet people asserting that the dog would have a better life in the Suits family than it would with the other prospective owner. Nikki felt she was playing the Suits card to gain an advantage to which she had no entitlement. And to quote Nikki, it left a sour taste in my mouth. Only when Meghan married Harry did it emerge that there was also a subtext to this scenario. And this is interesting because it's part of Meghan's really strategic social climbing to this California girl, mall rat from the 90s, who somehow clawed her way across North America and landed herself in people close to Harry's circles, to where she would get to exactly where she's gotten. And here Lady C tells that story. Only when Meghan married Harry did it emerge that there was a subtext to her adopting this dog. She was claiming that the adoption of the dog was due to Ellen DeGeneres, who had adopted its sibling, and according to Meghan's reminiscences, recommended, doubtless idly, if at all, that she would adopt it as she passed it by the cage. So, according to one of Meghan's long-standing associates, I wouldn't put it past her to have adopted the dog because Ellen had its sibling. I thought she'd use it to be able to create a link. And then the story goes on to where she's using it to create a link to someone with fame so that she could build her own greasy pole to ride up, one slithery inch at a time. And then I found out that there is another layer to this, because it depends if the dog she's talking about is Guy, who Ellen DeGeneres maybe adopted its sibling, and so she wanted to adopt Ellen DeGeneres's dog sibling on the pretense that maybe one day she would drop into Ellen's DMs and say, "Hey, we have dogs who are siblings. What if we reunited them? Wouldn't that be so cute?" Blah, blah, blah. And that's what she was trying to do. But it seems like Bogart's adopter was the mother of someone who writes biographies about the English court. I named that person when I did the video on Guy, but I can't think of her name now. But if it did, to think that she adopted a dog that moved her a little closer to Prince Harry, the circles of Prince Harry, is pretty interesting if it's true. So the second straw that broke Nikki Pretty's back for this friendship that Nikki Pretty had since they were in preschool together was obviously Meghan FedExing, taking her role as the FedEx girl in Horrible Bosses a bit too seriously, and then mailing back her wedding rings to Trevor Ingleson, and then just shutting that door and walking away, giving him no explanation for the decade that he spent with her. And she turned her back on Nikki Pretty as well. And Nikki says that there is Meghan before fame and Meghan after fame. Meghan's father hasn't put it in those words, but he has intimated, and her sister have intimated, that there is a Meghan from before fame, from before Suits, and there's a Meghan from after fame, which includes Suits and then the later marriage to Prince Harry, and that those are two different people. My argument is that those are not two different people. I think that the Meghan that has been working, or that was on Nikki Pretty and Thomas Markle's, friend list back when she was a child. And I think what happened is that Meghan just never stopped being a selfish toddler throwing a tantrum and just turning her back on somebody who's not doing what she wants. She's the kid throwing the fit in Barnes and Noble when you can't do anything. I have a story about my children. When a couple of them were born, I had stupidly brought like the 3-month-old into Barnes and Noble in my arms, and my 2-year-old was walking in with me. And my oldest 2-year-old, was my biggest tantrum thrower. And none of the others ever really measured up to his tantrums, thankfully. He has grown out of them, and he's a sweet young man now. But I carried them both into the Barnes & Noble without a stroller. And the Barnes & Noble where we lived had a train table, a Thomas the Train table. Now, this kid had a train table at home, but he loved to play with the Thomas the Train table at the Barnes & Noble. And so I had done what I needed to do in there, and I didn't give him the typical 5 minutes heads up. Okay, 5 minutes, we got to go. 4 minutes, we got to go. And that was how I would ease him into transition so he wouldn't throw a tantrum. Somebody called, and I had to get out of there quickly. And so down went the tantrum. And I can't physically carry the 2-year-old in my arm and the 3-month-old in my arm. And I don't have a stroller to lock the 2-month-old or the 3-month-old or the 2-year-old and the 3-month-old in. And I'm so embarrassed. And so I'm sitting here in the Barnes & Noble on the floor at the train table, just having to wait my son's tantrum out while I've got my 3-month-old in my arms, wishing and thinking, why in the God's name didn't I bring that stroller in here? What is wrong with me? But I always think of Meghan and Harry with this type of stuff, because these are two arrested development cases if I've ever seen it. And that's why I disagree with Nikki Pretty and her assertion that there's Meghan before fame and Meghan after fame. No, those Meghans are the same. It's just that tantrum throwing Meghan was never taught. She kept getting a bigger audience. And now she's got a worldwide audience, and no one taught her not to show her ass in the Barnes and Noble. That's what's happening, is that she got whatever she wanted so that she could leave the Barnes & Noble happy. I swear, if I could have picked up that train table and bought it in that moment that my son was throwing that tantrum, I would have, but I didn't have the arms. And what he wanted to do was stay there. I couldn't bribe him out. And he had to learn that his tantrum doesn't work. He can't hold us hostage with a tantrum because somebody told him no. And all of this that we've seen is because Meghan's dad told her no. I'm not going to disown my other two children and pretend like they don't exist and not talk about them with the royal family, because you know that they can break your stories that you've been telling the royal family, acting like you're this rags to riches self-made woman when you've had a man financing you for your entire life. And then the Meghan that came up against Trevor Ingleson, what I have heard from Hollywood is that he came up to being able to go to the Academy Awards, and he invited her, but she wouldn't come back from Ontario for it. And so he went with a friend of his, and she had wanted to go to the Academy Awards her whole life. So it's like, why don't you take me to the Academy Awards? Well, we can't move it to Toronto, Meghan. So it kind of all built up to that. And so in February of 2014, which is right before Oscar season, Meghan breaks up with him and just shuts the door, doesn't talk to him. It's like a wall goes down behind her, is what I've been told. So, she drops Trevor, as we know, in February 2024. Lady C does some talking about that, but I would like to hear your comments. So if you have any thoughts about whether or not you think that Meghan is Meghan and she's always been the same and she'll always be the same, is something I'm interested in, because to me, I think she's an ill-disciplined child. Harry's not. Harry's a broken child in another way. And he was admonished, but not disciplined. And Lady C gets to that a little bit later. But for right now, we'll take a look at this era with Corey Vitiello. And I apologize to Mr. Vitiello for misspelling his name on this slide, but I'm recording and I'm not going to stop now to fix it. So just know it's Corey Vitiello. She was with Corey from 2016 and 2018. And I put, are you crunching the numbers? Because I am, because we're going to need to crunch the numbers in a second when she meets Harry, because there is the gossip that she was still singing Corey Vitiello a song to keep him on the line while she was in the UK, just flouncing around every Soho house she could find, trying to find a rich person to marry so that she could be on Made in Chelsea, is what Gina Nelthorpe Town, her business manager, says later. And we will talk with Gina sort of through this book. So Corey Vitiello is another transitional relationship for her, because Corey is a famous chef, and he's really making his name in the Toronto scene. And the Toronto scene is kind of interesting because it's got like this entertainment slice and this like a film market, to where all the filmmaking in Canada is done out of offices in Toronto. But also the political scene is really big in Toronto because the nation's politicians are going there. So Meghan by sitting, at tables in Corey's restaurants, while he cooks dinner for these people, that she gets to know other transitional friends or transactional friends like Jessa Mulroney, who she had a falling out with, but we'll later talk about her with Lady C. And Jessica Mulroney is, I believe, the daughter, or she married the son of one of the vice presidents of Canada. Am I right there? But regardless, the thing is that she is now rubbing elbows with people like Justin Trudeau. I heard that spoken in Montreal one time, and I was just so charmed by it. I can't say it any other way now, but Justin Trudeau. Um, anyway, so she's now with political heads of Canada who are tied to the head of the state of the Commonwealth, which is Queen Elizabeth, who is her grandmother-in-law now, to her grandmother's disgrace, to her disgrace for treating her grandmother-in-law, who is not just her grandmother-in-law, but who is the mother of many nations and who proved herself time and time again throughout her reign and gave her life to the life of the Commonwealth. And it's a disgrace. And so I get why everybody is just as mad with Harry as they are at Meghan, and we are getting to Harry very shortly. But first, we got to keep with Meghan a little bit while she, as Lady C says it, while she is ascending the greasy pole. I highlighted it for you in the text of this biography because it just made me laugh. While she's with Corey, she's on Suits. She's paralegal on Suits. But we've also got social columnists like Shannon Gavani who are just regarding her as, quote, just a cable actress who, quote, didn't mean much when she met Corey Vitiello. So she's just a spider attaching her web to somebody else's so that she can cross that web onto the webs that are closer to the web she wants to land on. And I think that was, in some recess of her mind, may have been Prince Harry's web all along. I think it might have been Prince William's, and she thought she could wrestle Prince William away from Catherine, but I don't think that would ever have happened because William has too much sense, thank God. But in English history, there have been kings or certain heirs to the throne where people were like, are they going to have sense enough to not do this marriage? And with Edward and Wallace, no, they were not going to have sense enough not to do this marriage. And thankfully, Edward abdicated. But he was politically wrestled into abdication so that he could have his love. Anyway, so she's transversing her web, and we move over to Prince Harry's quest for love. There is a story that Lady C tells about Catherine, Princess of Wales, where at one point Harry was so desperate for a girlfriend. It's not sex that he wanted. Lady C says he was always looking for a relationship. He didn't want he get sex from anybody. Apparently, I mean, I'm not lining up, and I'm I'm not younger than Meghan. I'm a little older than Meghan, but I'm only a year or two older than Catherine and William. And I very much remember them being in our Tiger Beat magazine. So Meghan can say she didn't know who Harry was, but she did. And we know she did. Anyway, Harry's got his look for love. And Catherine, it got to be such a joke at one point. They give each other gag gifts at Christmas time. So they all get around, and whoever they've drawn the name for, or maybe for everybody, I don't know, but they give everybody a little trinket or a little gag gift if it's appropriate. And Catherine gave Harry this gift, grow your own girlfriend. And so that was what Harry was doing all this time. Meghan's sliding up and down one pole, trying to jump onto the next. And Harry is creating quite the intellectual or lack of intellectual pole for her to get onto. So, of course, when we talk about Harry's romantic life, we have to talk about Chelsea Davy. So, Chelsea is regarded by Lady C as, quote, a very attractive girl, as I can attest, having met her at polo. So, again, this is a place where Lady C breaks that fourth wall and talks to us as the reader. And she's like, I met her at polo one time. So this is how I know she's a very attractive girl, because I was there, saw her, which is something Lady C can do that not a lot of people can do, is my point. She is also very bright and sociable. Harry joined her and a group of her friends for a night out at a nightclub called Rhodes House, and the evening went so swimmingly that they ended up spending most of their time on the dance floor, entwined in passionate embraces. It was the beginning of a romance that would last on and off for 7 years. They had much in common. Both were fearless physically. She was a superb horsewoman who could ride bareback and had been known to wring the life out of a snake with her bare hands. Both she and Harry loved Africa. And Chelsea Davy is from Africa. And Lady C goes into her pedigree, I guess is what you'd call it. But I didn't think it was too important. If you are interested in it, though, it's right here at these page references in the book. But that just killed me, that impression of her. I just like the energy that is being given off there with Chelsea Davy. I am not wringing a snake's neck. I'm getting away from a snake as far as I can, and I'm trying to imagine I've never seen the snake before is how I'm reacting to a snake. But I'm glad that people like Chelsea are out there. Just saying. But they had this on and off, relationship for 7 years. And Lady C says, and I think this is interesting because it kind of shows Harry's arrested development, that there was genuine affection there, but their youthfulness and Harry's career in the army meant she had to endure what other like army wives and girlfriends do. But she also was running the gauntlet of the press. And she was also maturing into, quote, a positive, intelligent, and responsible adult, while Harry was, by his own admission, struggling not only with his identity, but also his ability to function as a sober and balanced adult. She was growing up. He wasn't, was how someone who knew them in those days put it to me. And the older and wiser she got, and that I'm speaking from Lady C's point of view. If you're just listening, I've got the book pages up. The older and wiser she got, the less appeal this airheaded drama queen of a prince had. By the time of William's marriage to Catherine Middleton on the 29th of April, 2011, although they were no longer viewed as a couple, Chelsea had not only helped Harry to write his best man speech, but also was his plus one for the wedding and the events following it. So they created this long-term relationship. There was still trust there. These are two people who know each other very well, who probably have, she probably has love for Harry still, it seems. But the person Lady C quotes here, the older and wiser she got, the less appeal the drama queen of the prince, to quote this person, had. And although, and that's what happened with Nikki Pretty and Meghan, with Trevor and Meghan. These are the same people in Arrested Development. Meghan arrested like at the time of a 6-year-old throwing a tantrum in Target or wherever, but her dad gets her the Barbie to shut her up. And that's what's wrong with her, is that they always threw stuff at her to shut her up and threw money at her. But I actually don't know that there was ever a Barbie in Target, but you get the analogy. So I think this is what happened with Harry too, except he obviously arrested at that moment we all saw of him walking behind his mother's funeral cortege. And I we all know that. Harry knows that. Anybody who knows anything about the royal family knows that that kid needed some psychological help, and he would never let people give it to him. And he admits that. If you read the travesty that is Spare, I am not going to review it, but you can see this is a kid in Arrested Development, and Meghan is a snake who is dressed up like mommy, and that's why this relationship, it's going to take some time to get um out of Harry's situation. And yes, I do think Meghan is more sinister than Harry is. I think Meghan is more of a public danger than Harry is. Because Harry, I think there's a quote elsewhere in here. Maybe it's with Cressida Bonus, but Harry is a lot of work for any woman who's an adult. He's like a child. If you read Lady C, he's like a child. And there's somebody who says, and it's in this presentation, but there's somebody who says that Harry doesn't even understand that some of what he's done has been so hurtful. Meghan's done a lot of stuff behind his back that he's found out in the news cycle, like we all have. He found out that his children were titled when Meghan put it out in People magazine the day before Prince Charles made his brother Edward the Duke of Edinburgh, which was a great little jockey there, but I'm sure we remember it well, those who've been watching this shit show for so long. But we'll move on to his other major relationship, and that is with Cressida Bonas. And people thought that that might work. Cressida's mom apparently was a well-established aristocrat. Lady C spends a lot of time talking. There's a big section of the book where Lady C talks about her personal connection with people in Cressida's family line in their pedigree. And so Cressida's mother obviously wanted Cressa and Harry to take off because, again, the life of a second son to the king, the brother of the king, is not a bad life. Meghan threw everything away. She could have done all the things she says she wanted to for help the world if she had stayed in her lane and quit trying to be queen and quit trying to act like she knew better than 1,000-year institution. That Meghan threw an easy life away because she thought she knew better. And she doesn't. And she, instead of growing, just stays in that place where she's screaming or sitting in that video. I should have linked it into this presentation, where she's sitting out on that video on the deck, and what she's doing is she's being pouty, and she should have the look either aggressively talked off her face or whatever, but her dad's got the camera on her and he's just saying, so determined. She's just so determined. And determined apparently is a euphemism for being a brat right now. And that's was the look on her face. But of course, her dad, thought that she could do no wrong until she started doing wrong by him. And then people start to think, oh, well, something's changed. Nope. I don't think they've changed. I think they refuse to change, and that's why there's a problem. So ultimately, Cressida is an adult woman too. She doesn't like the press any more than Chelsea did. And the love for someone who has to go in this relationship, there has to be some undying love that makes you take on the living your life in public as you have to do because of where Harry was born in the pedigree. And you just have to. Meghan's undying love was for herself and the things she thought that this marriage could do for herself. Whereas Harry's undying love, he felt, was for Meghan and for the family they would create together. But that was never Meghan's goal. And she never told Harry who she was. And Harry never told her who he was. And we'll get to that in the next slide here. Lady C, I kind of condensed chapter 3 down to say the few things that I felt like Lady C was trying to say, the major points. One is that Harry needs structure. He's not a smart man naturally. He thrived in the structure of the military. He thrives when people are around him telling him what to do, telling him what to say. He's a very good show up and be friendly. He was good at doing the royal job. And one thing that I think can be said for Harry is that he is as good as the person managing him. And so when he was left open to someone exactly like Meghan Markle, who knew exactly what he was looking for, which was mummy, that was the risk. And I'm not taking away from his agency, but he was wide open prey. There was a story that Lady C told about Harry in Africa. And Harry was with his scouts and with his guides, and they were like, we need to sleep up in the tents tonight because we've seen lions in the area. And Harry's like, there's not lions in the area. I know when there's a lion about and there's no lions. I want to sleep in the grass. And they were like, no, you can't sleep in the grass. There's lions around. And so he was like, no, tis no lion. No, I want to sleep in the grass. And then Harry, this is from Spare, Harry proceeds to then go stay in the grass. And, he's watching, and all of his guides and his, advisors, they go up in the tent because ultimately they're like, man, look, we're advising you, we're telling you what you should do. If your ass gets eaten by a lion, that's on you. And Harry was talking in Spare about how, he was so wise there because a lion didn't come eat him. And he, instead of viewing that as luck or just, taking the safe thing, and this I think is what Lady C means when she says they're both fearless physically, like we'll do about Chelsea and Harry. They'll both do anything, and hurl themselves physically at things. And I think that Chelsea started to know when she needed to sleep in the tent, and I don't think Harry ever did. And so there was a lion out there, and she found him, and hence has been our story. So next slide. As I was saying at the beginning, though, regarding this type of book, it is what interests me in Harry and Meghan is not their story. It's that their story has been repeated so many times. I talked, I believe, about the Duke of Clarence. I'm not sure what edit I'm on with this video, but I had talked about the Duke of Clarence and Edward IV. And then we've got King Henry VIII, and he was a second son who unfortunately ended up being king. Now, he was a good king to start up. Doesn't it look like he's wearing Crocs? Their shoes look like Crocs. Anyway, this is a reenactor. This isn't this is a reenactor picture. I just love the detail on the costuming there. But Henry VIII had this story with Anne Boleyn in a way. There's so many similarities. And that's my point, is that I think the royal family, they're just like, ride it out. We've been doing this for 1,000 years. These assholes are always coming around. Just ride it out. Don't complain. Don't explain. And what have Harry and Meghan spent their time ever since they left the court doing? complaining and explaining. Okay. Unfortunately, we got to go back to Meghan. So after setting up the TIG blog, which she established an audience, I think, of 100,000 or more on social media, and I'm not going to knock that. I'd love to get to 100,000 followers. If I get to 100,000 followers, I will start showing my face. And I will come out as who I am, not a secondhand Coke. I'll leave her behind. But I would love to get to 100,000. I don't know that I will, but we'll see. So after setting up the TIG and establishing herself on Suits and rubbing shoulders with the who's who of the Canadian government, including Justin Trudeau, and lounging around poolsides with Sophie Trudeau while Sophie sings jazz or whatever she sings. Anyway, so as Meghan's doing all this, this gets her to a connection that finally got her to where she was going, and that is meeting Tina Nelthorpe Cowan. And they kind of turned into Meghan. She was Meghan's business manager, but Tina goes on about how she thought they had this incredible friendship, but they didn't. And so this is around the time though with Meghan that she does the UN speech. I'm going to try to play it here and we'll watch just like there's a minute of it that we can listen to, and then I start to break out in hives, so we'll stop it there. But I do want to let you see a little bit of this because she's saying the same thing as she was back then. Anyway, I'll see if I can get it to play, and maybe I can't. Okay, well, I saved you that. Anyway, so we'll just go on. I would encourage you to look up this speech, Meghan Markle, UN Women. If you're the type of person that can listen to her, you are going to just tear your hair out when you hear that speech. It's just everything she's still saying. Like I said, she is in arrested development, and she's the teenager who thinks she knows everything, and should listen to her elders, but she doesn't. So, this is what Lady C wrote about. No. So here I looked up more about Tina Nelthorpe Cowan to try to hear this story from her perspective, because I wanted to see if Lady C's perspective and her perspective and my perspective lined up. And they all do, which is something I would say back when I was teaching English to just high school students. I would say with any story, you need to get multiple perspectives of it, get to the source if you can. And then, everybody around it, because that's how you check for bias, is you see if people are straightforward with what they're telling you. So this is from a Daily Mail article that I will put in the program notes. It's just a snippet from it, or a few snippets. So Tina Nelthorpe Cowan says, I first came across Meghan in 2014 when she was introduced by another of my clients. Back then, she was still acting in the U.S. legal drama Suits and had recently launched her lifestyle website, The TIG. I could immediately tell she was special, that she had star quality. And Meghan quickly became much more than a client. We fell into an easy friendship after only a few meetings. I had a deep affection for her, and she was under the impression that she felt the same. She said she felt the same. Believing that we could trust one another, we spoke openly to each other about our personal lives, and she revealed much about her life and her character. She valued my advice in both her professional and personal life and showed that she took real note of it. I'm afraid, however, that I had real misgivings when I realized she wanted Harry to propose to her. I doubted whether Meghan would be able to sustain the unrelenting pressure of being Harry's girlfriend, let alone, wonder of wonders, his wife. The moment she told me their relationship was looking serious, my enthusiasm turned to concern for both of them. It wasn't just the media attention. I remember distinctly explaining as we sipped wine in London's West End that she must cope with the enormous expectations of the British public, the royal family, and their courtiers. Her reaction was to hold up her hand and silence me. Save it, she said in a steely manner I had not noticed before. I don't want to hear it. This is a positive time in my life. At that moment, I felt uncomfortable in her company for the first time. It wasn't as if we hadn't shared secrets before, but this time it was different. I didn't know it then, but it was the beginning of the end of our friendship and professional relationship. She is a very ambitious woman, and when it is time to move on in her life, Meghan has a way of closing the door on the past, as she did with her father, her siblings, her first husband, and with me. And I would add Nikki Pretty to this roster, and about 800 other people, the entire royal family. This is Tina Nelthorpe Cowan telling this, I believe, right as Megxit was starting. This is Tina Megxit Cow telling the story from the Daily Mail. I believed then, as I do now, that she is no ingenue, but a worldly wise businesswoman on the mission of her life, the mission to bag not any old prince, but the prince. That's why I thought it was disingenuous, to put it mildly, when she told Tom Bradley during their ITV interview that she had been naive when her friends warned her against the dangers of the media. Meghan was a proper grown-up woman when she met Harry. She had also said that being American, she didn't even know who Harry was. That made me laugh out loud. I know when nonsense is nonsense, and this was demonstrable rubbish. We're going to change the world, she had gushed in my ear, her eyes sparkling with steely determination. I took her to mean that they were going to rule the world. I am certain that it has been her influence on Harry that is taking him away from his family. I don't mean to say he has no willpower of his own, but he put it well himself. What Meghan wants, Meghan gets. And that was Tina Nelthorpe Cowan in the Daily Mail. And you can go and check that whole article out yourself if you'd like. This is also the exact story that Lady C tells in her recounting of Tina Nelthorpe Cowan. The way I see it is that Tina Nelthorpe Cowan, she was not just a business manager, and this woman was her manager, and someone older than she was, who knew a lot more about the British media culture and what it is to be a member of the royal family than she did. And she wouldn't take anybody's advice. And know what? Neither would Harry. And he's accountable for that. We can also talk in the comments about whether you think Harry is more culpable, or whether, given this information, maybe you can see how he got to where he did. I think that's where I am with him. I am so sick of him. I just want to snatch him up by what red hair is left on his head and just point his face to mine and be like, stop it. You guys just stop it. And Harry has been stopping it a little bit. He shouldn't have shown up at the fires in California. He's got to stop showing up places with her, because if he shows up there, people are going to let her in. He gives her credibility, and he will continue to give her credibility until he separates himself from her. I don't know if he's got the mental strength to do that. I always hear they're divorcing. I never believe it, and I won't. Now more than ever, they live separately, from what I've heard about town, or what I've heard from my brother. But I don't know, and he doesn't know. My brother doesn't care. I'm the one who got him into this. Anyway, so that's the end of chapter 3. Yay! I feel like chapter 3 was the whole book in a lot of ways. So there's a little bit of tea that I want to spill before I let you go, because I'm going to post another video later today. But I'm trying to keep my videos a little shorter due to popular demand. But a little tea that I've been spilling for 2 months now is that I have heard Meghan is not going to Invictus Games in Vancouver or Whistler. I have heard this for 2 months. I've been saying it for 2 months, even though they said a long time ago last year that she was going to go and they were going to take the kids. I've heard that now things are that she is not going and she is not taking the kids, because if Harry will never be allowed to take those children out of the United States, you can bet on that. He will never be allowed, they will never be allowed to go any country where Meghan does not go. And that is so that she keeps custody, physical custody of those children at all times. And that is in preparation for a divorce. And I'm just saying that she is always ready to divorce. Meghan is always ready to pack up and go. If I've learned anything from this book, from Spare, from even the mindless drivel of what's that weird guy, Omid Scobie's books. If I've learned anything from all of that from Meghan Markle, this is my graphic of Meghan and Harry ruling the world. They're just superheroes. Oh my god, I think I put Harry on the woman's body and Mary. Whoops. There's nothing meant in that, or maybe there's something truly Freudian about it. I don't know. Oh man, I like when I tell myself jokes sometimes. Anyway, that's the end of chapter 3. We will move on to chapter 4 with Lady C's book. And if you have enjoyed this presentation, please like, subscribe, and leave your thoughts in the comments. I am really interested, especially on hearing what you think about who has culpability here and what level of culpability. You know, how responsible is Harry? How responsible is Meghan? Because these are children. They're in the bodies and minds with the influence of adults. And frighteningly, they are two people's parents, or supposedly. But just tell me what you think about all of these issues here. And I really enjoyed this chapter, but to review it was kind of a bear. So I feel good getting to the end of chapter 3, and I will be back a lot sooner than a week later with the next chapter of Lady C. So I've got a video created too that I'm going to put out a little later today about the Vanity Fair articles, and I'm excited to bring those to you. So that will be coming out soon. I appreciate you being here with me today, and I hope you have a pleasant one. Thank you very much, and see you soon.